Ladies and gentlemen, I have a simple message to deliver. I'm not going to take up too much of your time. Point number one has been made by many other voices on the internet, so we're going to cover that in 3 minutes flat. Point number two, I feel like nobody is talking about the internet because the type of people who have YouTube channels and, of course, who write articles in video game magazines and that sort of thing, those are not the kind of people who look at this from a parent's perspective. I think there are very fundamental reasons why the Nintendo Switch is really a bad product. I think there are very fundamental flaws with the basic concept of what the product is supposed to be that have ended up reproducing some of the fundamental disadvantages of the Nintendo Wii U, even of the N64.
CSK&D has filed a class action lawsuit against Nintendo of America Inc., Nintendo, for claims relating to alleged defects in the Joy-Con controllers that are part of Nintendo Switch gaming consoles.
2 days after buying the Nintendo Switch Lite, the analog stick are already drifting slightly when I move to the left. And it shows here on a 23-second video that basically confirms this is an issue. You can't detach the controllers. You need to literally send the entire system to Nintendo to get fixed. Otherwise, you will be stuck with a drifting Joy-Con.
I am not surprised that it's come to this point that these guys are getting sued because of it.
It seems to be legitimately showing this person having a drift issue with their Joy-Con on their Nintendo Switch Lite purchase that they just bought a few days ago.
The big thing that I never ever would ever support this console on is the fact that the Joy-Cons come attached to it. Ladies and gentlemen, the Joy-Cons are the f***ing worst piece of engineering. We're talking the worst when it comes to manufacturing of a controller ever, in my opinion. And let's get this started. Now, throughout every console generation, and I bought a lot of consoles, I'm a one controller type of person, which means if I buy a console, the controller that comes with it usually lasts me the whole generation. When I got the Nintendo Switch, immediately day one there were already issues, like we're talking about that left Joy-Con disconnecting, but that was not even the worst. The worst about it is the Joy-Con drift. And I don't care who you are, but if you've owned the Nintendo Switch for any period of time, you know that this happens to every f***ing Joy-Con that exists out there. And I've had 2 pairs of f***ing Joy-Cons.
The complaint filed in the United States District Court for the Western District of Washington alleges that the joysticks on Joy-Con controllers are defective, leading users to experience drift issues. Specifically, the complaint alleges that the joystick on the Joy-Con controllers will automatically register movement when the joystick is not being controlled by the user and interfere with gameplay.
Now, let me get this started. The Nintendo Switch is not a cheap affair by any chance. This is not a cheap console, okay? This is not the dollar store bargain bin system. It's up there in priced just within a range of the PS4 and Xbox One. So here's the thing. If those systems can come with controllers that work, the analog sticks are working just fine, which, like I said, there's been no egregious call out of either Xbox One or PS4. Why the f*** are the Joy-Cons exempt from this situation? Why are they coming out with drift?
If these analog sticks start to drift and are unplayable, that's the whole system being defective. That's a much bigger problem. That's a Xbox 360 Red Ring of Death caliber problem. And if this becomes widespread where everyone's experiencing Joy-Con drift on their Switch Lite, that makes for a defective console, not just for a defective controller.
There's no way one could sit back and deal with those analogs for an extended period of time.
We covered point one in just 3 minutes. But let me tell you, sitting through that kind of news, 3 minutes feels like a really long time. Point number two, let me just say to you hypothetically that, Nintendo, once upon a time, released this console, and the problem was that it had a controller that people found really intimidating and hard to use, a controller that kind of limited the options that programmers had in terms of gameplay, that sort of narrowed the number of genres of games that console could take on. And also the console was kind of priced at a luxury price, but it wasn't a luxury product. Like, people were aware from day one when they bought this console that it was less powerful and less capable than its competitors, that you were getting less value for money, but they had the appeal of certain, nostalgic, Nintendo characters, and they felt fun. And then there's the controller, and yeah, you know what? I'm describing both both the Nintendo 64 and the Wii U completely accurately. Nintendo, in trying to escape all of the problems they painted themselves into a corner with the relative failure of the Wii U as a console, they've ended up repeating all of those problems and making them even worse. You know what people used to say was the main flaw, the main disadvantage in owning a Nintendo Switch before this controversy about the controllers came to the fore? People used to say the quality of the screen was not good enough. I found an article where they were complaining that you could get a $100 portable device from a competitor with a much better quality screen, that they were charging a luxury price, and it really wasn't a luxury product. Guess what else? Everyone knows in terms of computing power, you're paying a lot of money for something where a big percentage of your dollars are going into the screen, are going into the battery, are going into miniaturization, are going into elements of the product that aren't used when you're sitting at a couch. The design approach has other big fundamental disadvantages. Getting rid of heat. When you can't get rid of the heat, you get cracking vents. The very portability of it, the fact that the controllers are detachable, you get a lot of problems with fragility. You have a 6-year-old kid, you really comfortable with them handling this product? You actually reproduced many of the fundamental disadvantages of both the N64 and the Wii U. Again, the controllers, look, even if we didn't have this huge, terrible issue with them not being durable and not being reliable, they really limit what people could do in terms of gameplay, in terms of conventional gaming. And what, just pretend it's only a minor added cost to expect people to also buy, a pro controller and this kind of thing. From a parent's perspective, these costs and these disadvantages cannot be justified. I completely understand there's a counter-argument that there's a certain type of middle-aged, affluent, unmarried gamer who's not raising kids, and from his perspective, the cost of buying any console is trivial compared to one night out at a bar drinking champagne. That's completely true. Where they can say from that target market's perspective, the cost of a console is trivial, and even the most overpriced software on earth is trivial compared to one night out drinking beer or one night out going to a baseball game. These kinds of comparisons. I completely understand that. And the market you're describing there? That is the same target market who bought the Neo Geo. Okay? Neo Geo was overpriced, and it stayed overpriced. All right? By the time the Neo Geo was remotely affordable, when it ceased to be a laughingstock, it was competing with the Sega Saturn and the original PlayStation. Okay, that was a long console generation, and it was still overpriced for what it was. Okay, there always has been a market for that. The kind of person who would buy a Neo Geo and be happy with it. Okay, from a parent's perspective, the huge advantage Nintendo has is that they're one of the very few software companies that's interested in making software for children. I Googled this stuff because I have a daughter. There were very, very few games you can talk yourself into buying to play with a child on PlayStation and on Xbox. That's not what those consoles are built for. It's not who they're marketed towards. But if you look at the reality of the hardware and the constraints that Nintendo forced upon themselves, the ridiculous controller, which is terrible design choices, terrible strategic choices with the Wii U, and now again with the Nintendo Switch, they put themselves at a horrible disadvantage for the one market they could most easily capture. All right? The Nintendo Switch is fragile, it's unreliable, and really, if you're being honest with yourself, it's brutally overpriced for what it is.